I nuked my entire spell system and rebuilt it from scratch. In the last video, I created a game with the main focus being a spell casting system that technically worked, but the more I used it, the more I realized it just wasn't good enough. So in this devlog, I'm going to share how I redesigned the entire thing from the ground up and turned it into a flexible card-based spell casting system. In the last video, I shared my first version of the spellcasting system. It worked by combining different variables from spell cards that would generate a key, and that key would be used to cast the correct spell. Although that system worked, I and some of you guys also realized that for every combination of spell cards, we would need to have a spell prefab, which meant adding new spells was awkward, and expanding the system was painful, and it didn't really give me the design freedom I wanted. The biggest issue was flexibility. Every time I wanted to add a new spell, I basically had to hard-code new behavior, which completely defeats the point of having a spell system in the first place. So instead of patching it, I decided to rebuild it properly. Before touching any code, I stepped back and thought about what I actually wanted from the system. I wanted spells to be dynamic, and so did some of you guys. I wanted to be able to mix and match parts of a spell, like combining different elements with different behaviors and modifiers. So I came up with a new structure where every spell is made from 3 parts: elements, behaviors, and enchantments. Elements define what the spell is made of. Behaviors define what it does. And enchantments are used to add a little something extra to your spells. Basically, I want to be able to build spells out of components. Okay, I started by building a basic framework by using the plane I made on Millernote. At first, I just wanted anything to work, and eventually I got my first test spellcasting again, which already felt way cleaner than the old system. In this new system, it only uses elements as keys to find and cast base spells, whereas in the old system, it would use all the spell card types as keys to find and cast spells, which made it very tedious to add more spell combos to the game. From there, I created a spell dictionary to help map combinations to actual spells. This makes it easier to expand later without rewriting everything. Now, elements act as keys that define the spell, and depending on what behavior and enchantments you combine with them, you get completely different results, which also means spells are now dynamic. So now the spell system is built around 3 different card types, and because all of these are modular, I can mix them together in tons of different ways, which is exactly what I wanted from the start. With the core system working, I finally moved onto something more visual: the art side of the game, which was a pain. I started by working on the tile set for the game, which took way too long to make because I was trying to figure out how I could add more depth to a 2D top-down tile map, similar to these references, which I'm pretty sure is just good lighting. Anyway, I decided to split the tile map into 3 main layers: the ground layer, the wall layer, and the top layer. This makes it really easy to add depth to a 2D game. Moving on, I then started working on the player sprite and basic animations. Nothing too fancy yet, just enough to bring the character to life. Is what I would have said if it didn't take me twice as long to make as the tile map. But Deleuze, why did it take so long to make? Because I am very not good at hand-drawn animations. The number of times I'd redo the player animations because it wasn't perfect, or how I envisioned it, was around 6 to 7. Anyway, I finally forced myself to like these basic animations. For now. Moving on, after getting sick of the art side, I went back to Millernote to start planning the EMS, aka the Enemy Modular System. So this system is basically how the brain of the enemies would work. Every enemy will have an enemy AI script, which will hold 3 different enemy modules, which are enemy movement, enemy attack, and enemy behavior. They do exactly what their name states. Enemy movements control how the enemy will move, from chasing the enemy to patrolling routes. Enemy attack will determine what type of attack the enemy will use, from melee to ranged to explode on contact. Those two modules are very simple compared to this last one, which is enemy behavior. Now, enemy behavior controls when and where the enemy will use those other two modules. So I could have an attack on sight enemy behavior, which will make the enemy move towards the player using its movement/trace module, then deactivate it when in range and activate the attack/melee module. And that's basically how the EMS works. Behold, Stonehead. Because I was sick of drawing animations, this enemy is just a single sprite that is animated in Unity. I also created a base enemy animator controller, which I can reuse on multiple different enemies using an animator controller override. That's it for the enemy stuff. Wait, did you see that? That effect was possible thanks to something we call animation events, which are simply put events you can activate during animation keyframes. And using this custom script I made, I can create different events and activate them whenever I want. Moving on, as you might have seen, I've also created prefab for each base element in the game. Now here's a good question. What do you think will happen when two spells collide? Nothing. At least nothing yet. I'm thinking of creating another dictionary to handle spell collisions and reactions. If you have any other ideas, leave them in the comments or feel free to join my Discord. Link will be in the description down below. And I'll see you in the next one.